please hold. We have another session also coming up, so you all can wait for the session. Hi everyone, now we'll have Nirmala Menon. I have already mentioned that she is one of the steering committee member, and she is the founder and CEO of Interweave Technology Consulting and has been working on diversity and inclusion space. She'll be taking a master class on a fair game decoding gender gap. Nirmala, over to you. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Taruna. Have you decided whether you're going to stay here or step off? Is my presentation set up? Yeah. Okay, so it's a really nice, cozy little group. Yeah, I think we've had enough of all of the gender conversations. I guess that's why most of you have chosen to leave. But very, very quickly, let's go over some of the stuff that we talked about, but summarize it, look at why this has happened, why have we got ourselves to this place, and what could we do about it. So what will we do over the next 40 minutes, 45 minutes that we have? Explore why the industry, and the gaming industry in particular, has so few women. We've been talking about a lot of things, but we'll explore that in some depth. And why and how we can... No, I'm fine now. Oh, okay, so... yeah. Okay. So for that extra light, I'm here. We'll also talk about what we could do, and I think we're all stakeholders in this, right? Men, women, organizations, the government, all of them have to play a role in this. And that's what we'll explore. All right. So gender inequality, 21st century, does it even make sense? Yeah, but we heard enough to know that it is there, right? Does gender even matter? I think there was this question that this young person asked. Does gender matter? Our skills matter. Does gender matter? What do you think? Yes? No? Shouldn't? It actually does matter. It's one of the first things you notice about somebody when you see them, right? And the rest of your interaction with that person is based on that understanding. And if there is a mismatch there, you're going to be a little distracted. Your conversation is not going to be as engaged. So gender is a very vital, important part. It also contributes a lot to the way you have been socialized and raised, right? Right from childhood, pink and blue, and I mean, that's the reality, right? Boys don't cry, girls must be quiet and modest, and all of that stuff that one hears. So gender is an extremely important part, and it has to be acknowledged. And then, of course, why is inequality such a moving goal for women? We've been talking about equality since when? And we're still talking, and there's a fatigue in the industry, really. Everybody's saying, we've been talking about this, if we haven't achieved this, it must be because women don't want it, right? Yeah, stuff like this. So there's a lot that's going on. So let's look at what is gender equality. Does this mean that from now, women have to be like men and men have to be like women, like those acts? No, that's really not what we're saying. What we're saying is that the rights, responsibilities, opportunities, and all of that is identically available for men and women. It's not based on your gender. And true equality will be when you are able to use your interests and strengths and, saying you're a woman, you don't fit in games, is not equality, right? So that's really what we mean by saying, and there are men who don't fit in the corporate world at all, but they're not given a chance to step up because you're a man, you work, right? So that's really where, it matters for men. Many times we tend to think of women's equality or inequality as a women's issue. It isn't. It's for men, it's for the world, it's for the community. Everybody needs to be talking about this. And gender equality is great for everyone. All right. So did technology promises equality? When technology came and the internet came and all of that, we said now we can be genderless. We can create our own avatars. We don't have to be men and women anymore. and equality will come. This is a great equalizer that's happening, right? We said we can be powerful on the internet. Nobody knows our identities, right? So that's really not what exactly happened, but it did give its own support, and I think we talked about it. Technology gives you space to talk about your challenges, your issues. It's taken power off a lot of social issues. Women are able to come together, the Me Too movement, etc., etc. It's brought women's issues to the fore, so technology has helped with that for sure. Lifted accessibility and geographical boundaries. Now you can work from wherever you are. We talked about that as well, and I do know a lot of women who are using virtual assistants and virtual offices and working out of remote villages, running their small little businesses. Encouraged entrepreneurship for the same reasons. Technology has helped women manage their work life a little better. You're still ordering groceries, but it's easy to do it on Instamart and whatever, Big Basket. Those are some of the additional challenges that we talked about, right? The unpaid work. Women continue to do it, but technology has made it a little easier for them. Help to combat stereotypes by showcasing role models on the internet. You do see a lot of women. You read about them, and that inspires and gets you to act as well. Social networks where women can continuously receive guidance and advice, and I think we talked about that as well, right? So you put out something and you get advice. There are forums like this. So technology is enabling a lot of that, and you don't necessarily need face-to-face interaction. But that's not the full story, right? Every technology is set in a certain social context, and our social context hasn't changed all that much, okay? So we have, in a sense, nicely adapted technology to suit us, right? So women will still order Big Basket and Instamart because that's their job, to get the grocery and the refrigerator filled. So we haven't really changed out of that mindset. We're using technology to do what we have been comfortably doing all these years. So your horoscopes are matched on the internet, your pujas can be done virtually. I mean, we're keeping all of those traditions but using technology for it, right? So in a sense, all technology is being used for that, and you will realize that, the fact that women, young children were being killed in India, and that's a true, female feticide and all of that, continues. Our gender ratios are pretty bad. So what does that mean? You're using technology to find out, and there is sex-selective abortions and terminations of pregnancy, etc., resulting in more boys and therefore men, etc., and that's a skewed society, right? That's not fair at all. Then there are unequal opportunities for professional education. Now, if you have a girl and a boy, chances are, if you're not very wealthy and you have to kind of make the best of your money, you're probably going to send the boy to school and not the girl. Yeah, so who has access to the internet? It is the boy. Who has the opportunity to go and study outside? It's the boy, right? So you're enabling the boy to succeed far more than the girl. When there is a shortage of money, it's always the investment goes on the boy. Yeah, and there's been all these studies, and I'm sure you're familiar with it, which says that if you're looking at gender equality, it's not going to happen for a good 100 years, right? So it is going to take us a long while to get there. It will get there. Organically, we will get there, one woman at a time kind of a thing. But if we want to move things forward, we need to do some very conscious things. And then, of course, I think we heard enough of the safety and security thing on online gaming or any interactions on the net. Women are far or disproportionately impacted by, the threats and hostile environments that show up there. So again, families stop women from going on the internet. And the worst thing, I mean, all of this exists, but the worst thing is that if this is how it exists, and with technology becoming so central to our lives, this disparity is only going to grow. So the inequality is going to grow if we don't do something very quickly about it. Yeah, so we have a big problem on our hands. So we have all of these little things that are happening, and then I think we need to add all of these different things that come with it. Be less entitled for success. Most times women stay flexible. My child is unwell, or my boy is getting into the 10th standard, my girl is doing her 12th grade exams, I need to be around to supervise. Just so many things for which the woman has a pull to get out of the workforce. Impact of stereotypes impacting confidence and ambition. A woman who is strong, and we call this the double bind. We say, when you act like a leader, which is to be assertive and strong and vocal, you're seen as being less of a woman. And when you behave like a woman, being, gentle and soft, not being a leader, right? So you lose out both ways. So it's a difficult one for us to deal with. Family support is not real for a lot of women, even today. They'll say, okay, you picked it up, now you struggle, you do this. Oh, thank you so much. I will hold this in my hand. Yeah, so this is another challenge that we have. And then, of course, bang in the middle of your best career years will come the child. And then if that's not handled well, you've lost that woman, right? So you're wondering, where are all the women going? They're coming out of universities and, acing their exams, but just disappearing after that. So these are all the reasons that kind of get us here. Additionally, challenges of the gaming industry, and I think you know this better than anyone else, it's the hard skills. Women have, and I think Tara was talking about the using your soft skills better. Yeah, it's always seen as hard skills, men have it, and women need to build it, right? Social stigma, okay? You want to play games? What kind of a girl are you, kind of a, it's just not socially acceptable. Boys are allowed to play games, boys are allowed to break rules, girls have to stay within the boundaries, you have to be a good girl, etc. The expectations are far, far higher for women, right? Believe the industry is too volatile, highly competitive. Why would you want to take this up? You'll have to be a mother, all of that. So there's a lot of discouragement from there. I think we talked about this as well, the hypersexualization of women in gaming, yeah, which makes women uncomfortable. They're not very comfortable staying there. Toxic environment, we talked about that as well. Face sexism and gatekeeping, and of course, pure role models. We talked about all of this on our panel, so this is a summary of everything that we spoke about. But yes, all of these are things that are keeping people away from the gaming industry, while it's using technology and it could be done from anywhere and anyone could do it. Right? So why must businesses be concerned? This seems like a social issue. Why would businesses be involved? Lots of reasons why they should be. One is, say, 50% of our population, our human resources. No country can progress with 50% of its resources, human resources, not participating in economic activity. Can you think of that? Yeah, 50% women, 50% men. So we're doing a huge injustice to ourselves and to the country if you're not using our women, right? And then, of course, it's a human rights issue. Women want to work. Women are talented. God has been very kind in ensuring everybody, skills and talent is distributed equally across both genders. But we tend to think that only men can do certain jobs. And India has huge room for improvement. We are very, very low. We are one of those few countries where there are fewer women from 10 years ago who are in the workplace. Surprising, but that's the fact. Yeah. It's one of those few countries where women's participation at work has actually reduced. Okay. Only 22% in the gaming industry, and I think that's very high. I heard it was only 10%, but this I picked up, from one of the research papers that I saw, but then, it varies from different studies. But again, 48 to 50% of the gamers are actually women. So if you don't have women creating games for women, we are missing something. We're losing a market there, right? And then, of course, women are increasingly more qualified, and they're far more aspirational than they ever were before. In fact, I think women have progressed far faster and stronger and aspiring more, and our boys haven't kept pace. Yeah, many times they're unable to believe that women are wanting all of these things, because somehow they were the ones that were the champs of the yeah. So a lot of things have changed. The psychographic changes that have happened. No woman is hoping to stay home and look after children anymore. They're all wanting a life outside work. The big joint families are gone. So the double income is required if you need the man and the woman to work. So all of these have changed, and marriage and all of that, which used to be the only ideal for a woman, has changed completely. Today, a lot of women are choosing not to get married because they say that's going to put just too many constraints around me, and again, that's not a good trend. So, all of this has societal impact as well, right? So, organizations must be concerned, because if women don't get married or have children, you don't have the next set of human resources to run your industry and your company, right? So, you have to be concerned about that. And then again, you have the fact that they bring diverse perspectives, which I don't need to talk about. You understand that. Yeah, the decisions, the gaming, the storytelling, everything changes when a woman's perspective is brought in. In fact, there's this very interesting thing when the Lehman Brothers, crisis happened, a financial crisis. There was an article that came out which said that if it was Lehman Brothers and sisters, it may not have happened. The rationale being that men tend to be higher risk takers, and here were a group of men on the board of the company taking higher and higher market risks. And if there were a woman in the group, she might have said, hey guys, are we going too far? Should we be pushing back? It's just a thought. It's a hypothetical thought, but an interesting one, because what are we saying? It's not about one being better than the other. And I think Shavana Azmi's quote, we're equal but different, is, I think, very, very valuable. It's about bringing that balance, and that's why we say gender balance. Yeah, it's not that one is better than the other. And of course, organizations that have diversity and are safer workplaces, etc., will attract better talent. They will be better employers. And for all of those reasons, organizations want that. And then, of course, there's tons and tons and tons of studies which say that, women in the organization help in the bottom line. Okay, so for all these reasons, it's here to stay. The Sustainable Development Goals puts gender equality at the center, goal number 5. Because when it's looking at poverty eradication, education, health, if 50% of the population is not getting it, they're not reaching their goals. So we definitely have to invite women into the conversation and take them forward, right? So these are all the reasons why organizations absolutely need to invest in this. So how do we transform organizations? Now, big question. Nothing changes easily. But I'm going to tell you a little story here. This is a story about a giraffe and an elephant. Yeah, they were good friends. They lived right outside Gachibowli, a few kilometers from here. And they were architects. They were both architects. They had worked together. They knew each other really well. But they had gone apart. One had moved on, etc. And this giraffe was living in a rented house in Gachibowli. And he said, I'm an architect. I shouldn't be living in a rented house which is not built for me. I'm going to build a house for myself. So he went and got himself a nice plot of land and built a house just perfect for giraffes. And so it had very tall doorways and ceilings, so he could walk right in without having to bend his head in. His family was very happy. They had narrow hallways, so they could walk comfortably, and it saved a lot of space. He placed windows right on the top of the wall, so you could look out and without bending your head. Just a perfect giraffe house. So good that it won the Best Giraffe Home of the Year award. Okay, the giraffe and his family were very, very thrilled about it. They were comfortable staying there, and life was going on. One day the giraffe was looking out of the window, and who does he see? He sees his ex-colleague, the elephant, passing by. So he calls out to the elephant and he says, hey Elfie, I live here, would you like to visit? And the elephant says, of course. I read about your home and it's won an award, I would love to see it. So the giraffe says, yeah, come on in. And the elephant comes. He comes in through the gate, he comes to the door, rings the bell, the door opens. Do we have a problem? Yeah, right? The elephant can put his head in, he can't bring his body in. Right? So the giraffe says, don't worry, I've got this all figured out. He goes, removes a panel, and it's wide enough now for the elephant to come in. The elephant walks in, they sit down, they're having a nice chat, they're looking at some old blueprints and talking about their latest projects and the ex-colleagues and what are they doing now, etc., etc. Then Mrs. Giraffe calls from the room upstairs and says, hey dear, there's a call for you, your boss is on the line. You better take this call. So the giraffe tells the elephant, hey, just make yourself comfortable, I'll be back in a few minutes. Trots up the staircase, goes up to take the call. Now, the elephant is sitting here, he's getting a little bored, and he says, maybe I'll look out of the window. Well, the window is not, low enough for him to look out of, so he has a problem. He kind of settles back, and he says, maybe I'll go into the studio. He goes into the studio, again, he's able to put his head in. He can't get his body in, so he says, okay, maybe I'll just go up the staircase and look out of the window. He goes up the staircase, and guess what? He takes a couple of steps, and the whole thing has crashed. Okay, so the elephant is on the floor, and in the process he's broken a couple of furniture. Total mess. The giraffe and his wife hear all the noise, and they come running, and they say, what the hell has happened here? And they see the elephant on the floor and the broken furniture, and the giraffe says, I know what the problem is. You're way too heavy. you need to lose some weight. So the elephant is very embarrassed about what's going on. He's coming to this house. He didn't mean to do any of this, but it's happened. But as he gets up and dusts himself, he thinks, that is not, however much weight I lose, this is not fair to ask of me. Meanwhile, the giraffe is going on. The giraffe says, you know what? You need to go to the gym. You need to be exercising a lot more. And while you're at the gym, they're also offering dance classes. So you should do jazz and ballet because then you'll get light on your feet so you can go up my staircase without breaking it. A whole bunch of suggestions to the elephant, and the elephant is saying nothing, getting up, apologizing profusely for what's happened, and says, I'm moving on, I'm so sorry about what happened, and the elephant leaves. End of story, but a valuable lesson in multiple ways for diversity and inclusion. Okay, so let's analyze the story. Different components have different perspectives. Now, the giraffe enjoyed the elephant, his company and the work that he's done, admired him, and that's why he invited him in. And the elephant accepted the invitation for the same reason. But the minute things went wrong, the fault was completely with the elephant. Okay? I hope you're able to see some of this because I heard some of these things being said today. I think you said it's all about fixing the women. And this is not just for women. It could be for anybody, by the way. It could be any diverse group. It could be an introvert, extrovert, whatever you want to put in there. Right? So they have different perspectives. And the elephant says, I can accept this only to a certain extent. How much ever I exercise or dance, there's only that much weight I'll lose because this is who I am. Right? Many are reluctant to embrace diversity. Now, the giraffe invited him. He didn't know all of this was going to happen. Now, there has to be a very compelling reason for the giraffe to invite the elephant one more time. The giraffe can choose to say, hey, this is just too much work. I'm not doing this. Right? So there has to be a compelling case for it. Diversity tension is inevitable. Now, even assuming that they build a perfect giraffe-elephant house, the minute they start being authentic with each other, troubles will come. So inclusion is not a once-and-done job. It's about an ongoing piece about handling the conflicts that will come along with it. There will be things that will happen which you will need to keep ironing out and finding ways of dealing with as you go along. Right? Whose house is it? It's the giraffe's house. Right? The giraffe decides who will come into the house. The giraffe will decide how comfortable you will be. The giraffe knows the rules of the house, how far you can go, what the rules are, etc. And the elephant is always an outsider. You can't complain too much. This is somebody else's house. I have to leave my aspirations and everything at the door as I walk into your house, right? So they definitely need to be making some changes there in terms of whose house this is and who owns it. And then, of course, whose job is it to fix? Whose job is it? Giraffe and the elephant. The elephant will also need to change to be part of this, but the responsibility is higher on the giraffe because the giraffe owns the house. Giraffe is the boss in the matter, and not just the giraffe. It also has to be Mrs. Giraffe. It has to be Junior Giraffe, Baby Giraffe, all of them, right? So everybody has to participate if the elephant has to be comfortable in the house, right? So this is a great story in terms of what we need to do as organizations. Accept the complexity of diversity. It's not just about gender and people with disabilities or the LGBTQ community, etc., as we tend to talk about it. The intersectionalities make it extremely complex, right? So we need to kind of keep that in mind as organizations. Build a compelling case. There is a very strong business case, as we saw earlier. There's also a very strong moral case for this. So kind of making that absolutely vital. And you'll see this across the globe, right? Whether it's the World Economic Forum or the UN or wherever else you go, they're talking about gender equality at work and in leadership particularly. Diversity tension, we talked about that. Yeah, it has to be continuing support. Who takes accountability for it? The organization, the leadership needs to take accountability. And of course, all stakeholders. And when I say all stakeholders, every single one of us has to play our role in making that change. Yeah? So real inclusion happens only when there's intellectual conviction, emotional acceptance of it. Yeah, there is a reason why I need to be doing this, and it has to show up in some demonstrated behavior. You cannot be inclusive in your head as long as you're not doing it in action. You may not be inclusive in your head, but you're doing all the right actions. That's good enough for progress to be made. Which is why companies have their code of conduct and their policies and all of those things, because that's forcing you to behave a certain way, and that behavior is what will create the change, right? Okay, so how could organizations step up? Multiple things, and I'll give you a set of things. We talked about some of these things already, but it's good to go over it. Acknowledge that women are an important constituency for all businesses, whether it's gaming, whether it's manufacturing, whether it is IT services, whatever, right? So it is important that you are recreating this, because most people don't understand why it's necessary. An average manager in an organization, as we know today, will ask, why do I have to hire a woman or a person with a disability? There are enough able-bodied people, or there are enough men available. Why would I do this? Right? Because then they don't come up with reasonable accommodation. They don't come up with, my child is unwell and I need to take a day off. Yeah, it's much easier. So you need to build that compelling case of why we need to have women, despite, if you want to call it, the inconvenience of it as they see it. The current system sees it as an inconvenience. So how do we change that perception? And that happens through conversation, through showing facts of why that is important for us. Offer programs on inclusive leadership, again, very, very important. You know, this is not going to change. Just because there is a mandate from somewhere, from your headquarters or whatever, saying we need to have more gender balance, you may go about the motions, but it will never be an activity that's coming from the heart. And this will not succeed if that's not happening. So the emotional acceptance of it is very, very important for it to work. Workplace inclusivity, and there are a whole bunch of policies that you can think about. You know, how do you hire inclusively? How do you, limit the biases that play out when you're hiring people? You know, all of that, flexible work, mentorship, pay parity, all of these are important things to consider when you are talking about being an equally accessible workplace. It's ensuring that both men and women have equal opportunities to grow. It's not about anything else. It's not that they need to have in the process you may need to do certain things for equity purposes. Because we tend to look at equality and equity as the same, but it is different, and I don't think we have the time to go into that right now. But some form of support may be required in organizations for women to step up and be that visible, significant number in organizations. Advocate for diverse narratives. I think we talked about that, to have more women in designing and developing games, so the storytelling changes. Yeah, so we need to do that. Address concerns as human rights issues. It doesn't have to be a gender issue or a person with a disability. It's a human right issue. When we start to look at it that way, some of these things will blur and make it easier for us. So these are some things that organizations can do to bring about equity. How men can help. And when I said organizations, many times organizations are headed by men. Men are the gatekeepers in organizations, in homes, right? If you don't have the father's support, the child is not able to step out and work, or if you don't have your spouse's or your partner's support, you're often not able to do some things that you want. So men, who are typically leaders again in organizations, have an individual responsibility on this. So we need to convince them to be good role models. How can you step in and stop somebody from speaking over another woman? The mansplaining that we talk about, right? All of that. Promote inclusive practices, offer mentorship. Yeah, so like you were saying, who do you mentor? Kind of make that part of the process, saying that everybody needs to have at least one or two people that you mentor and get up to the next level. And I've seen it work. I used to work with IBM some years ago, and I remember we were having this conversation, and we had a very senior leader who was from Sweden, I think he was. Yeah, he was from Sweden. And it was a nice meeting, and he got up and he said, this problem is so severe, and I take on the responsibility. Find me two women. Get me two women, and I will make from band 7, yeah, and I will make both of them ready for their next promotion in the next 1 year. And he took it on, right? Made a public commitment, took it on. So we need more men to do things like that, to see that others continue that legacy, right? Speak up as you see bias. It's not that I don't think men don't notice toxic behavior or bias. With a little attention and mindfulness, they certainly can, and they have a great role to play in terms of stopping it and correcting it. Hey, that's not okay. That's not funny. Just one intervention like that can help to change things. Use work-life, and I say here, use work-life policies. Now, when you have parental leave or even paternity leave that organizations give, many men don't use it. Since I'm such a good worker, I work through my wife's delivery, right? I'm just showing up for work only, that's my life kind of a thing. So you're telling men, you are just as much a parent. And there's joy in parenting and caregiving. You're missing out on a few things simply because of whatever society has told you need to be. So there is a cost that men pay for their gender as well, while we often think it's only women. So helping them to see that, and Men's Day is coming up, and I think we need to kind of talk to men and say, hey, you want gender equality for yourself. You're not giving away something, you're going to gain something from it. Yeah? Be intentional on inviting women to the table, get them to participate in prestigious assignments, roles, nominate them for conferences, to be speakers, whatever, right? Share the spotlight. Yeah? Highlight women's achievements. So if your woman colleague has done something good, I think men have far more reach and their network better, etc., etc. Do that service and help people see, because then it kind of changes the narrative again in terms of what can happen for all of us. Now, of course, women also have a responsibility, and the elephant also has a responsibility, right? So what do they need to do? Of course, build skills. Absolutely. Your gender card can't be your entry ticket, right? It has to be skills. And this is an industry that's constantly evolving and changing, so you need to be at the cutting edge of that. Establish a good online presence, right? Put out all the projects that you're doing, do individual projects, talk about your commitment, your areas of interest and passion, etc. Somebody will notice, right? And it's going to give you that leverage, right? Leverage your networking opportunities. We talked about how women typically tend to not network as much. Yeah, it's not easy, it's not in your comfort zone maybe, but I think it's vital if you're looking at growing in the industry. It's something that you need to do as part of it's a job that you need to do, right? So, and many times women have a real issue in terms of, doing late night socials and stuff like that. Make it a lunch appointment, make it a coffee meeting, a breakfast meeting. There are multiple ways in which you can do it. It's about putting your mind to it and saying, I want to do it, but I'll find a way to do it, right? Advocate for yourself, ask for what you want, and I think we talked about that as well. We're talking about how do you negotiate for yourself, right? Many times we just kind of take the offer, I'm so glad I have a job. A lot of times women who've taken a break, for example, when they come back in, they're like, oh, I'm so glad I got a job. It doesn't matter that I'm not. No, you need to get what you deserve, or you're going to lose self-respect and self-esteem over a period of time. It's going to erode. Because money, even if you don't need the money is an indicator of where you are in your career and life. So I think for that reason you need it. Yeah, prepare for a very competitive industry. Yeah, continuous learning, vital. And I think that's across the board, not just here, but here possibly a little bit more, right? So gaming industry is not an easy one, but it's a fun one, obviously, which is why we're all here. And so, get with a program on that. And of course, I've also decided to give IGDC some work on this, right? Yeah. As an industry body, they have a lot of clout, right? So these are some of the things that they can do in terms of setting industry standards and telling companies, hey, do this. This is the most basic that we will accept, right? And then the ones that are doing really well, recognize and reward them, incentivize them in some ways. I don't know what, we put our heads together, we certainly can come up with what needs to be done. Set and enforce clear policies on respectful behavior. I think, the law exists, but there are many things that are not covered by the law, which kind of makes all our lives very difficult, right? So how do we call out disrespect as soon as we see it? When we see it escalating, we don't have to wait for it to become harassment for it to be reported. Giving people the courage. A lot of times people step back and say, I don't want to upset things, and, I don't want to draw attention to myself. And given the Indian context, many times it's also seen as a woman's fault. You laugh too much, you smile too much, why were you sitting so late in the office, why were you wearing what you're wearing. Just way too many things that are put back on the woman, so that keeps them from reporting, right? Offer mentorship and support networks, which I think IGDC is doing really well, and with the setting up of the hubs across different cities, I think some of that will get taken care of. Mandate accountability, seek reports on some of these things. Ask for inclusion indices, you know? Yes, the law exists, the POSH law, for example, you need to file cases, but there are multiple other kinds of things that happen that go under the radar, but these are things that are real for a lot of women in workplaces, the toxic environment. So can we report out on those kinds of things? Provide visibility and funding, and I think those are things that IGDC is doing anyways. So these were some of the things that I thought we could do, and I've really crunched my presentation to kind of talk only about the key points. Everybody needs to work together, and like I always say, to change is difficult, not to change is fatal. The big dinosaurs didn't die because they were not intelligent or strong. They died because they didn't adapt themselves to the changing environment. And every single one of us, whether we are individuals or organizations, we have that responsibility to adapt, or we are done. We're not going into the future. Yeah, so that's a very quick presentation on what we could do. Thank you. Happy to take some questions if you have any, or because it made it easier for me because a lot of it was covered in the panel discussion and all of that. Anything that's, I work across industries, so.
Hello. Yeah. Sorry. Is there someone?
I'm here. Yeah.
Am I visible? Okay. Hi, Nirmala. Thank you so much for sharing what you did. I think a lot of these talks and panel talks, and they're really helpful because you do feel like, okay, this is something I relate to. But a lot of it revolves around the what's and not the hows. So I'm really happy that you've been talking about the hows and also from a very systemic kind of point of view, right? So love the crunch, but I had even in the previous discussions, right? What's coming across is something. Let's just take something really specific as an example, as this conference. And I love what came out in the previous one is there's so many conferences that feel warm and welcoming and some not. And you also did mention what IGDC could be doing, but in terms of a very tangible, in the next conference in 2025, how do we, the talk that you gave is so important for organizations, but how do we get those people to come and listen to this talk, right? How do we kind of make the space more welcoming? And I know that I don't know what that means also because there's so many aspects to it, but if there are a few more hows on something that, let's say if I wanted to volunteer and kind of make those changes for next year, 3 days of event, is there anything that you have in mind, or anyone else has to share?
There are plenty of things that can be done, and I will just wait to hear what people have said. And I think Taruna and Shilpa, we are part of the steering committee. We will pick this up. We will certainly pick this up and make a, substantial, some change that is tangible by the next conference. We certainly hope to do that. There are all these hubs that are there in Delhi. Where are you based out of? Bangalore? Bangalore, there is a group. Yeah? IGDC, yeah, Meghna is in charge. Great. Yeah, I think what we hear then is that it needs to be publicized more. Yeah, if people don't know about it, there was a mail, sent out and all of that, but more of it. Yeah.
This is
this is a problem for all of us. One idea could be that we need to have this as keynote. Why is this not on a bigger hall? Why are we not giving it the importance that we all feel very strongly towards and want to give? This is maybe one nice practical way to do it.
Absolutely. Yeah, so we run a conference every year, and one of the things that we do is ask more men to part. And over the years, it's begun to change. Otherwise, the minute you say women in games, oh, it's only for women. And thanks to the few men that are here, yeah, we need more men. We don't have to preach to the converted, right? No, no. But when it's an equal group, when it's a balanced group, that doesn't happen as much. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's in the small things, it's in the everyday things that change happens. Yeah, so there are ways in which you can, I mean, it's not going to change by next year, but I think it's going to take some time for sure, but it will certainly change. And it's already started changing. I do see a lot of men far more engaged. That is correct. That is correct. And even in organizations, I hear of young men choosing to not take a promotion saying, I have a small child and my wife works, which has changed. It's just not across the board yet. Yeah, and we have to get our men to accept that it's okay to not be an economic provider all your life. Yeah, because that's so closely woven into the norm of being a man. You're less of a man if you don't have a job or you're not doing a man's job. Right? So how do we make those changes? Make it comfortable for men and women to grow as they are, because young children are not aware of their gender. We teach it to them in multiple ways. Right? And then we say boys do this, girls do this, and don't do that, etc., etc. So they are, human beings, and then they become men and women and say, oh, we can't talk to each other. It's strange. So we can allow everyone to blossom in their own balance of masculinity and femininity. All of us have it. Yeah, it's just that we're encouraged to display more of one over the other. Yeah, and it's sad. I mean, you look at how a young boy who cries, the mother saying, boys don't cry, are you a little girl? And the minute you say, are you a little girl? No, I'm not a girl, I will not cry. Right? It's almost saying the girl is less valuable than a boy. It's this very subtle messaging that goes, right? And then what happens? It's not that the boys don't feel sad or upset or don't feel pain, but they learn to suppress it, and then it comes up in other forms of some risk-taking behavior or, some illness or whatever else. So, the power of crying is good. And we are so ashamed of it, right?
I just wanted to also add to that. Sorry, if anyone has a question, please take the mic from here. But another open question, right, is that somewhere just to reflect upon how can we also tell the story a little differently, like you're saying, right? For example, a toxic environment is a general problem. Like a man mansplaining is mansplaining to anyone. I've noticed that. Men who talk a lot, it's not like they're talking over a woman. They just I have so many men colleagues who really don't know how to navigate through the situations as well, and everything that you're talking about. So I think somewhere, and smaller steps, but next year maybe we could also, get together and think of how we can tell this story a little differently, and maybe we are not being inclusive to them, I don't know, somewhere,
Yeah.
in the sense that hey, we're not including them, maybe a bias or subconsciously. So I think, yeah, I would love to have conversations later on and maybe work through the year to see what are these smaller little specific things that we can just do to make this space a little more warm for us, but also look at it from that perspective. Any questions?
Hello, ma'am. This is Anshu. And I'll just put up one situation in front of you. That's a real situation. And then I'll ask my question to you. So I have a friend, more of a colleague, but a good friend. And we were working together. And in one office party, she was faced some office harassment from a man who was also a colleague of her, and a close colleague who she never thought of that she will be harassed by him. So after that, she has taken it to the administration and they have taken all the necessary actions according what was necessary. But even after taking the necessary actions, she wasn't able to get out of it. The mental toll it has took and getting out of it mentally, it was a real challenge. So my question is, I have two questions. So first question is, she also shared it with me, but as a man, we have some barriers that we cannot understand lot of problems that is going through a woman's life. And I was there to help her a little bit, but I wasn't sure if I'm even providing a proper help. So my first question is what as a man we can do differently. And my second question is even they have taken the necessary actions, what leaders could have do differently or addition to that so that they could help her even get out of it, the mental state as well. What do you think that we should do more, even apart from legal actions? What actions should we take so that even after the necessary actions and everything is there, but women should be able to get out of it as well very well, and they can focus on work and everything again as well.
Yeah, personally, I think it's building awareness. Many times women don't even realize they're being harassed. Yeah, because you've been told stay out of places that are dangerous for you, this, that, and the other. So if you find yourself in a difficult situation, you're blaming yourself. I came here and therefore I am, right? So it takes sensitive colleagues like you, for example, to actually help out and say, you know, I can, and you can intervene. I mean, it's very easy to see when a woman's being made uncomfortable by somebody. I mean, you really have to be blind to not notice. Okay? So if there is a party going on and somebody's saying something to a woman that's embarrassing her or she's kind of uncomfortable, you could say something and take her away, or say something to this man and say, hey, I want to tell you something or show you something. Break that. And sometimes, you know, with drinking and all of that, that tends to happen as well, you blame it on your drinks. You say, I wouldn't do it if I was in the right frame of mind, but, you know, I was drunk and therefore I didn't know what I was doing, excuse me. No. Not acceptable. So building that awareness that you are responsible and accountable for your behavior is vital for men and for women to understand. That education is the first step, because changing mindsets don't happen by rules and policies and the law. Mindsets need to change with it and through the heart, honestly. The way to change your mind is through the heart. So giving examples of what's happened. I mean, let's take, for example, we do a lot of work around Posh as well, the company that I work in. A simple thing like, can a look be harassment? What do you think? It's the most common kind of harassment. Okay? But how do you even put down a complaint? So-and-so looks at me in a way that, you know, but yeah, I have eyes, I'm looking. You know, and a lot of men would say, what's wrong? How is it hurting you? I'm only looking. But if you are that person that somebody is looking at inappropriately, you are cringing. Yes?
And do you think that leaders should additionally do something different from just legal actions to
Of course,
make it?
building the culture, saying this is, you know, we will not tolerate these kind of behaviors. So women will start to report and say, hey, you know, I'm feeling uncomfortable in this room, or a joke being said. And it's always, hey, can't you take a joke? I was only joking. Yeah, sexism comes like that.
What about the after effects? These are just the necessary
Yes.
culture we are building.
It's
But
a-
what
it's a
about the
complex-
after effects a leader can do to
Okay, after effects for the leader, there's more after effects
like
for
the
the
after
complainant.
effect for the harassment is a legal action only. But what a leader can do addition to that apart like after effect?
The leader, not so much. The complainant fears retaliation, right? And in the Indian context, it's very, very real. I know a particular case where it was actually proven that she was being harassed. The parents said, we are not raising a case. The company had to kind of concede to it. They said, look, we can do something about it. Parents said, we are not raising a case. Without raising a case, you can't really, you know, terminate the guy. So we found ways to kind of get him out of the system. It was not the best way to deal with the case, but that's what we did, simply because the father said, you are going to throw him out, He will know that my daughter complained. My daughter has to live her life. She has to go to the market. She has to go to the movies. You know, who's to say that he won't throw acid on her face? It's not an unusual story, right? We hear it all the time. So there are things that are very intense about it. Most times we tend to talk of these things very flippantly. You know? Yeah, women are just making a big deal of small things. It is not. And which is where the sensitivity needs to be built. And we need to have more men participating.
I would like to add to what Nirmala mentioned. So a lot of organization is coming up with employee assistance program where the counseling services are provided. So just the legal action will not suffice because there is a lot going on in the mind, and it's very important that we recommend that counseling is not something which we should perceive differently. It is very important. And as a man, I think if you are a colleague of that person, you can always recommend to take up those sessions. That is really helpful because there is a stranger who is listening to you and can really help you come out of that situation. So these are some of the initiatives. Besides this, I like to add on with what you mentioned and what Nirmala mentioned on building a culture. Like we also encountered this similar situation and we had to terminate one or two employees with that instance, but that was a learning for the organization. And as a corrective action, what we did was before any party happening, we make a panel or maybe a group of people who are always present at the party places. We do connect with every woman in the group, guide them because there are freshers who come across, would not be knowing, would be hesitant, and we make them meet those people. In short, and telling them that we all would be available at the party place. If you see a minor instance happening and you feel uncomfortable, report immediately to us so that we can protect before anything happening at that place, because again, rings are common in the parties and we need to be cautious of that. Besides that, we also update our leads, project managers, that they conduct some sessions before any party happening, and we do it like we have yearly parties and things like that, or annual parties. We ensure that there is a session by the leads and project managers where they guide them, drink as per your capacity, be mindful. You would have your, women colleagues also. We also guide their colleagues that if you find that there is somebody overdrunk, do immediately report or take your friend out from that place where women are there. So these are some of the guidelines if the companies would establish, take up it as learning. I think that will really help. That's what I will say. You'd like to add something? Yeah.
I think the most of the leaders are also not sensible about it. They can only just take the legal actions.
That's
What
right.
we can also do is that we can legally enforce the company as well, that if in such cases you should voluntarily and mandatorily provide therapy sessions and everything to the women.
That's right, and that's the change coming
Because
up
that is
nowadays.
not in the culture right now. I don't think it is. For some company it is, but for even for the small company, and most of the things, such things, I mean, I'm not biasing this all, but such things also happen in small companies and as well. But they don't have necessary resources or something like that, and don't make it mandatory that we should provide mandatory from the company mandatory sessions and therapy sessions for the people who are affected to that.
That's a very
And that we
valid
can do
point.
legally to enforce such situations.
So, see, the legal foundations can directly come for the courts or the associations. That would not be possible. But yes, you rightly mentioned in one of the key takeaway we can have
Make the courts and everything to address, and
that.
then it's become something. It's about.
That
It's up to us. Then
that's
we
right.
address it, and then only it comes to the court, and then it's become a culture.
That's true, but as in part of maybe the IGDC steering committee, this is a really good point that we can take up. And when I was talking about building up a rating system for the gaming organization, because everybody wants to be on the there is a list. IGDC is a renowned body, and when we want to establish that during or building up a policy, these are something which we can incorporate. This is really a good suggestion, and wherein we can bring in that which are the organization would like to offer, because they would not be really sensitive enough that this is something that can be done. So again, awareness and education, which Nirmala mentioned, is really, really important.
And it's not true that it's only law that can come in.
Yeah.
Organizations have a responsibility to have committees that look at it, so it stays within the organization. It's when it doesn't.
Organization should take that responsibility as well.
It
not
should
just
take the
legal
responsibility.
actions,
That's true.
but they should also
Yeah.
take the responsibilities the after.
Again, I would put it to the fact that many of them are not aware what is sexual harassment. To a lot of people, sexual harassment is molestation and rape. Everything in between is to be handled. Yeah? So I think important for them to understand what is sexual harassment. Yeah? So
It's not from the same topic.
They've covered the organization and the awareness part, but I think as a colleague, you can communicate more with her. See, when you are in such a situation, right, sometimes you feel guilty that it was my fault also partially, or am I making a ruckus, or is somebody judging me? There's so many things in your mind that goes on, right? But see, as colleagues, as all of you, you're there, right? If you make her feel comfortable, if you make her feel, okay, it was never your fault, you don't have to feel judged, nobody looks at her, everybody, be very normal around her. So it'll take time for her to recover, right? But she will recover with the therapies and everything that is going on, but you also have to make her very comfortable. Make her forget about it. Make her so peaceful, make her so stable, make her happy that she forgets. That's what you can do at your end for her, right?
Hi. I'm just a bit curious on policy change and how that would affect companies, and I'll come back to my own example. I was working with one of the wokest agencies in the world, on business and everything else, high performer. But the year I got pregnant, they didn't want to give me my mat leave, so I quit and I started my own company, etc. But I would have loved to stay, right? But I just felt like backed into a corner. So how would you sort of like deal with harassment is one thing, but also systemic things like mat leave and just getting paid for the value that you bring and negotiating toward that?
So yes, this would qualify under discrimination. Yeah, and discrimination over a period of time can become harassment. So there are all these technical aspects to it. But this is, the law provides for it. 6 months. Yeah. They did not give it to you. They pushed you to.
I got it, but like after like my lawyer had to get involved and a lot of that, which just left a bad state. But like I built that company, I bought it to India. Like I would have really loved to stay. So that just left a bad distaste. And I know that this is common. Like I know this happens a lot. You don't get promoted just when you're like at that age of trying to get pregnant, and they'll give you your bonuses, but they won't give you that promotion or leadership position.
So these are conversations that are happening in corporates today.
Okay.
Yeah, so we do bring these conversations up. And see, India is not a suing culture.
Yep.
Not yet. Yeah. So we are building that awareness with organizations, saying, people have the right to take you to court, and they fear that. Any public exposure, being out there on social media, on Glassdoor, all of that, organizations don't want that. So more and more organizations are realizing that they have to do right by their employees, which is a good thing. Thanks to technology, that is happening. So if these kinds of things are happening, they will happen less and less as we go along, because this can be brought up like you did with the lawyers, and because this is a very clear case of discrimination.
Yeah.
Right? Now, in terms of the promotions and things like the appraisals,
Yep.
you get a good appraisal for the time that you worked. Just because you went on mat leave, a lot of women accept less than ideal ratings because of that. So we are trying to build awareness with the women, with organizations and leaders, and sometimes the conversations are very intense. Yeah, they say, you are on vacation, 6 months you are not there, the rest of them are working, so we have to have that safe space to have those conversations. And once you help them, and we sometimes use theater and multiple ways in which to convey the message. So when you ask a manager, when a woman comes to you and says she's pregnant, how do you feel? Because my first thought is, the job, the work that needs to be done. And Okay, besides the woman is not going right away, she has another 8 months, which you can plan, and any, self-respecting organization can plan for something that's going to happen 8 months later, right? So I don't think that's a problem at all. But having said that, it is important for this individual. What was I saying? I lost track of my thought. See, I went off somewhere else. What was I saying?
As to basically, a lot of these conversations are happening in boardrooms.
So we are talking to leaders, and these are intense conversations, but we continue with those conversations simply to let them know that they need to do right.
Are the men understanding?
The men are understanding, which is where I was coming from, the theater piece, where we say when the woman comes and says, what are you thinking? And this is what you're thinking. What if your wife comes and says she's pregnant? Okay, then you're a little softer. Okay, so we have a kid now, whatever. And then your daughter comes and says she's pregnant. You want the best for her. You want her company to provide this and that and the other. Now, every woman there is a daughter of somebody and the wife of somebody. So think, a lot more inclusively. So I don't know what all it will take for us to change mindsets, but these are all different things we are trying. It's a tough journey, but we will get there. And the more numbers and I'm seeing more men, like this gentleman there was a great example of somebody who's taking up the cause, and I'm seeing more young men come up, which is wonderful.
Thank you for that.
Yeah,
Amazing.
thank you so much.